The sound of laughter and screams filled the air, children shouting with excitement, roller coasters clanking as they climbed high before plunging down. The smell of popcorn and hot dogs drifted through the breeze. But this wasn't a fairground. This wasn't a city park. I stood frozen at the edge of the property, my suitcase still in hand, my heart pounding. My land, 5 acres of open space that had belonged to my family for generations, was now an amusement park, a huge one. The moment was surreal. Where my grandfather's old barn once stood, there was now a towering Ferris wheel, its colorful lights blinking mockingly. The small fishing pond where I used to catch tadpoles with my brother was now surrounded by a mini golf course. I blinked, hoping it was all just some kind of prank. But it wasn't. A child ran past me, holding a bright blue balloon. "Come on, Mom, let's go on the bumper cars." I clenched my fists. What in the world was going on? Then, I saw the sign near the entrance, its bold letters burning into my brain. "Welcome to Maplewood Adventure Park, proudly sponsored by the HOA." The HOA. The Homeowners Association. Rage boiled in my chest. They had built this monstrosity in my land while I was away, without my permission, without even a single notice. Then, I spotted her. Lisa Thornton, HOA president, standing near the carousel in her high heels, sipping from a fancy cup, laughing with some board members as if she owned the place. A slow smile crept onto my face. They had no idea that they had just walked straight into my trap. Lisa Thornton didn't notice me at first. She was too busy soaking in the admiration from the other board members, basking in the glow of what she thought was her greatest achievement. I took a deep breath, forcing my hands to relax. Not yet. Let them enjoy their little victory. I turned on my phone's camera and started recording. Every ride, every concession stand, every sign that said, HOA proudly presents. I made sure to capture everything. If they thought they could do this quietly, they were dead wrong. I needed answers, and I knew exactly where to start. I walked straight toward Lisa, my footsteps crunching on the gravel. As I got closer, her laughter died down, her eyes finally locking onto mine. For a split second, a flicker of recognition crossed her face. Then, she masked it with that sickly sweet smile she always used at HOA meetings. "David," she said, her voice full of fake cheer. "Welcome back. You're just in time for the grand opening." Grand opening? She actually had the audacity to welcome me to my own land like I was some visitor. I kept my voice calm, but my words were sharp. "Lisa, what the hell is going on here?" Lisa blinked, playing innocent. "Oh, is there a problem?" I scoffed. "You mean besides the fact that you built an amusement park on my property while I was gone?" I stepped closer, lowering my voice so the surrounding families wouldn't hear. "Without my permission." Lisa gave a delicate laugh, like I had just accused her of stealing a candy bar instead of 5 acres of land. "Oh, David, you must be confused. This is common property. The community voted—" "The community doesn't own this land," I cut in. "I do?" Her expression didn't change, but I saw the slight tension in her jaw. "David," she said, lowering her voice to match mine, "this land was reclassified. A new survey showed that the original boundary lines were incorrect. It's all perfectly legal." I felt a surge of anger, but I took a deep breath, forcing myself to think. They did a reclassification while I was gone? I had been away for 6 months, handling my father's estate in another state after his passing. When I left, my land had been untouched. Now, it had roller coasters on it. "You didn't even notify me," I said coldly. Lisa sighed dramatically, as if I were being difficult. "David, the HOA has the right to make changes for the good of the community. Besides, think of the children. Look how happy they are." As if on cue, a group of kids shrieked with joy as a spinning ride launched them into the air. My blood boiled. "You have 1 week to tear this all down and get off my land." Lisa's smile hardened. "David, That's not how this works. The park is already operational. Investors are involved. There are contracts. I suggest you take a deep breath and think about the bigger picture. I stepped even closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. You stole from the wrong person. For the first time, I saw her confident mask falter. I turned on my heel and walked away. I needed to act fast. Lisa and her little HOA puppets thought they had everything under control. They had no idea what was coming. I spent the next 24 hours diving into every record I could find. First, I checked the county records. Lisa had conveniently reclassified my land as community property 3 months ago. But when I dug deeper, I found something interesting. The paperwork was full of discrepancies. The signatures approving the change didn't match the real property owner's signatures. The HOA had forged documents. I called up my lawyer, Greg Hastings, an old college friend who loved taking on corrupt organizations. "This is textbook fraud," Greg said after reviewing the documents. "We can take this to court and bury them." "We're doing more than that," I said. "I want this park gone." Greg chuckled. "I like the way you think." I wasn't just going to fight back. I was going to destroy them. Lisa and her HOA board thought they had all the power. They had money, connections, and the ability to manipulate the system. But they had overlooked one crucial detail. I was smarter than them, and I had time to plan my revenge. I filed an emergency injunction against the park, citing fraud and illegal land seizure. That would slow them down, but I wasn't stopping there. I reached out to a local journalist, Sandra Mitchell. She had been covering corruption in HOAs for years, and when I told her what was happening, she nearly jumped through the phone. "This is huge," Sandra said. "You have proof?" "Plenty." "Good, because I'm going to make sure this goes everywhere." Next, I started gathering witnesses. I found other homeowners Lisa had bullied over the years. People who had been fined ridiculous amounts for violations that didn't even exist. People who had mysteriously lost property to the HOA's reclassification tactics. One by one, they came forward, ready to expose Lisa's corruption. Finally, I set up hidden cameras around my property, because I knew Lisa wouldn't go down without a fight. 2 nights later, at exactly 2:30 a.m., my motion detectors went off. I watched from my security feed as a group of men dressed in black, carrying tools, started ripping out my survey markers. I smirked. Perfect. I called the police, then grabbed my camera and ran outside with a flashlight. "Hey!" I shouted, shining the light on them. "Enjoying your night, gentlemen?" They froze. One of them cursed under his breath. Lisa wasn't with them, but I had no doubt this was her doing. The police arrived minutes later, catching them red-handed. By morning, the footage was all over the news. Lisa tried to deny involvement, but it was too late. The HOA was already crumbling. The best part? The city had opened a full investigation into all of Lisa's HOA dealings. And I still wasn't done. 2 days later, the county sent a formal notice. The HOA had no legal right to the amusement park. They had days to vacate. Lisa tried to fight back, filing an appeal, but it didn't matter. Because while she was busy scrambling, I dropped the final bombshell. I had found an ancient burial ground on the property. Legally, that meant all development had to stop immediately. Lisa was finished. The HOA board turned against her, throwing her under the bus to save themselves. And just like that, the amusement park, the entire project, collapsed. I watched with satisfaction as the rides were dismantled, one by one. By the end of the week, my land was empty again. The amusement park was gone. Lisa was disgraced. The HOA was under investigation. Lisa disappeared from the HOA. Rumor had it she moved states to avoid the lawsuits piling up against her. And as for me, I stood on my land watching the sunrise. I had won. I should have felt victorious. But something told me this war wasn't over just yet. But something didn't sit right. Lisa had gone down too easily. She was the type to claw her way out of anything, yet she had vanished without so much as a press conference. No attempts to clear her name. No desperate last-minute schemes. I didn't buy it. And I was right not to. 3 days after the last ride was removed from my land, I found an envelope in my mailbox. No return address, no postage, just my name. I opened it cautiously, pulling out a single sheet of paper. Watch your back. You think you won? This is bigger than you realize. No signature. No clue who sent it. My stomach tightened. Lisa was bad, but if this was bigger than just her, then I had just made some very powerful enemies. And they weren't done with me yet. Later that afternoon, my lawyer Greg called. David, I just got a call from a real estate investor. They want to buy your land. I frowned. Who? A company called Ridgecrest Development Group. Ever heard of them? I hadn't. They're offering double the market value. Double? That didn't happen unless someone was desperate. Greg continued. I looked into them. They're a shell company. No public information on who owns it, but I have a feeling. Lisa. Or whoever was pulling Lisa's strings, Greg said. Someone really wants that land. I exhaled slowly. Tell them no. Already did, Greg said. But I don't think they're just going to walk away. That night, I barely slept. Around 3 a.m., I heard it. A noise outside. I grabbed my phone and quietly moved to the window. 2 dark figures were sneaking around my property, flashlights cutting through the darkness. I hit record and zoomed in. They weren't just looking around. They were searching for something. One of them knelt by the old oak tree where my grandfather used to tell stories about the land's history. He pulled out a small shovel and started digging. My pulse quickened. They're looking for the burial site. I wasn't about to let them find it. I stepped outside and flipped on my floodlights. Hey! The men froze like deer caught in headlights. They bolted. I chased after them, but they were fast, too fast. Within seconds, they disappeared into the night. But they left something behind. A business card. Ridgecrest Development Group. The next morning, I met with Greg, Sandra, the journalist, and my old neighbor, Henry, a retired cop who had been keeping an eye on things. Someone wants that land bad, Henry said, sipping his coffee. Enough to commit fraud. Enough to send guys in the middle of the night. Sandra leaned forward. I did some digging. Ridgecrest Development? It's tied to Lakeside Ventures. Greg's eyes widened. Lisa's husband works for Lakeside. Lisa wasn't working alone. This was a full-blown land grab operation. And I was standing in the way. Sandra smirked. I think it's time to really make their lives miserable. I grinned. Let's expose them. Sandra's article hit the internet hard. She laid it all out. The HOA's fraud. Lisa's forged documents. The connection to Lakeside Ventures. How Ridgecrest Development was trying to cover it all up. The article went viral. Local news stations picked it up. Then, a state senator got involved, calling for an official investigation into HOA corruption. Lisa's entire operation was under a microscope now. And then, she finally reappeared. I was out front, checking my mail when I saw her. Lisa Thornton. She wasn't wearing her usual smug expression. She looked rough, like she hadn't slept in days. She got out of her car and walked toward me. I crossed my arms. Didn't expect to see you again. She hesitated, then sighed. We need to talk. I raised an eyebrow. About? Lisa glanced around, as if making sure no one was listening. They're coming after you. I stiffened. Who? Lisa rubbed her forehead. Lakeside, Ridgecrest, all of them. You don't understand, David. This wasn't just me. I was just the face of it. But the real power? They don't lose. And now you've made them angry. I watched her carefully. Why do you care? Lisa let out a bitter laugh. Because they threw me under the bus. They're making me take the fall for everything. Good. I almost told her that. But instead, I said, "So what do you want from me?" Lisa hesitated. Then, in a quiet voice, she said, "I want to help you take them down." I didn't trust Lisa, but I did believe she wanted revenge. And right now, that was useful. Lisa started talking. She told me everything. How Lakeside had been using HOAs across the state to seize land. How they manipulated legal loopholes to reclassify private property. How my land was supposed to be their next big project. But here's the real kicker. They already had a buyer lined up, Lisa admitted, for a luxury resort. I clenched my jaw. This wasn't just about HOA corruption. This was organized crime. Lisa sighed. "They won't stop, David. You need to be ready for whatever they throw at you next." I smirked. "Oh, I'm more than ready." I called Greg and Henry. "We need to hit them where it hurts," I said. "Legally?" Greg asked. I grinned. "And publicly." We launched phase 2 of our attack. First, Greg filed a massive lawsuit against Lakeside Ventures, citing fraud, illegal land seizure, and conspiracy. Then, Sandra ran a follow-up story, exposing the luxury resort deal that had been in the works. It blew up. The governor's office got involved. Lakeside Ventures started scrambling to do damage control. And then, the FBI showed up. Apparently, I wasn't the only one they had screwed over. Lakeside had been under investigation for months, and my case? It was the final nail in the coffin. Within 48 hours, multiple executives were arrested. Ridgecrest Development was dissolved, and my land? Permanently protected. Lisa, for all her faults, had been right. Lakeside didn't lose. Until now. I stood on my land, watching the sun set. It was mine again. No HOA, no amusement park, no greedy developers. But I knew this wasn't over, because there would always be another Lisa, another Lakeside, another corrupt HOA. And next time, I'd be ready, because this wasn't just my land, this was my fight. The battle should have been over. Lakeside Ventures had collapsed. Their executives were facing criminal charges. My land was officially mine again, protected by the courts. But I should have known people like Lisa, people like the HOA, never go down without trying to drag everyone else with them. I was about to learn that the hard way. 2 weeks after the FBI arrests, I got a letter in the mail. Summons for a lawsuit. I sighed, already expecting something petty. But when I opened the envelope, my stomach dropped. The lawsuit wasn't from Lakeside. It was from my own HOA. They were suing me for damages. I read through the ridiculous claims. Defamation for exposing their fraud. Lost revenue because of the amusement park being torn down. Community harm for stirring discord among residents. It was a desperate, pathetic move. I should have laughed. But then I saw the amount. They were demanding $5 million. I called Greg immediately. "This is a joke, right?" I said, pacing my living room. Greg sighed. "It's a nuisance lawsuit, but it's dangerous. They don't expect to win. They just want to bleed you dry with legal fees." My jaw clenched. "So what do we do?" We hit back. Greg filed a counter lawsuit demanding damages for emotional distress and legal harassment. But we both knew the real goal. We needed to make sure the HOA couldn't afford to keep this fight going. And for that, I needed help. I wasn't the only one who had suffered under the HOA. Lisa may have been gone, but the board members who had backed her were still around, still pulling strings. So I went door to door. I spoke to every homeowner they had screwed over. The elderly couple fined thousands for a mailbox that was the wrong shade of beige. The single mum threatened with foreclosure over a flower bed. The veteran forced to repaint his house 3 times because the HOA changed their minds about acceptable colors. One by one, I got them to sign a petition, not just to drop the lawsuit, but to dismantle the HOA entirely. And once I had enough signatures, I called a community meeting. The board members weren't expecting a fight. They thought they could intimidate me in court while keeping their control over the neighborhood. But when they walked into the meeting hall, they saw hundreds of residents waiting, and they were angry. I walked up to the microphone. "For years, this HOA has abused its power," I began, my voice calm but firm. "It started with small things, ridiculous fines, selective enforcement of rules, but then they got greedy. They tried to steal my land, and when they failed, they sued me using your HOA fees." A murmur ran through the crowd. "They stole from me, but they've stolen from all of you too." I gestured to the petition. "This document calls for a full vote to dissolve the HOA, to strip them of their power permanently." The board members started scrambling. "This is outrageous," one of them shouted. "You can't just—" I cut him off. "The HOA bylaws state that if 2/3 of homeowners vote in favor of dissolution, the HOA ceases to exist." I turned to the crowd. "All in favor?" Hands shot up. 80% of the room. It was over. Within 2 days, the HOA was officially dissolved. The lawsuit against me? It was dropped. Their accounts were frozen pending investigation. Their remaining board members, fleeing like rats from a sinking ship. I stood on my porch that evening, watching the sunset over my land again. The battle was finally over. Or so I thought, because just as I was starting to relax, I got a phone call. A call that would change everything. I answered the phone. "Hello?" A deep voice responded. "David Jackson?" "Yes." The voice was calm. Too calm. "You don't know me, but I know you, and I know what you've done." I tensed. "Who is this?" A pause. Then, "Enjoy your victory. It won't last." The line went dead. I stood there, gripping the phone, my heart pounding, because I realized something chilling. Lakeside Ventures might have fallen. The HOA might have been destroyed. But whoever was truly behind all of this was still out there, watching, waiting. And this fight? It was just getting started. The HOA was gone. Lakeside Ventures had crumbled. And yet, as I stood on my porch, gripping my phone, a cold realization settled over me. This wasn't over. The mysterious caller's warning echoed in my mind. Enjoy your victory. It won't last. Who was behind this? And what were they planning next? I was about to find out. Greg, my lawyer, wasn't thrilled when I told him about the call. "David, we just took down an entire HOA and a corrupt real estate empire. Maybe, let's not go looking for more enemies." I shook my head. This person knew everything. They weren't just watching, they were involved. Greg sighed. "You think this goes deeper than Lakeside?" I nodded. "I think we only cut off one branch of something bigger." Sandra, the journalist, agreed. "I started digging into Lakeside's financials," she said, pulling up documents on her laptop. "And guess what? They weren't the real top guys." She clicked on a name, Sterling Holdings. They're a multi-billion-dollar real estate investment group, and they own hundreds of HOAs. My stomach dropped. Lakeside Ventures wasn't the mastermind. They were just a puppet. And the real players? They weren't just after my land. They were after entire communities. The next morning, I heard a knock at my door. I opened it to find an older man in a suit, his sharp grey eyes studying me. "Mr. Jackson," he said smoothly, "I'm Charles Whitmore, Executive Director at Sterling Holdings." I crossed my arms. "I was expecting one of your people to show up eventually." He smirked. "I admire your tenacity. You took down Lisa and Lakeside. Quite the accomplishment." I said nothing. He continued, stepping closer. "But here's the thing. You've disrupted a very profitable system. That makes you a problem." I met his gaze. "Then I guess you have a problem." He chuckled. "No, Mr. Jackson, you do." Then he pulled out a file and handed it to me. I flipped it open and felt my blood run cold. Inside were photos of my family. My sister, my nephew, my best friend Greg. They had been watching everyone I cared about. Whitmore smiled. "I don't believe in unnecessary violence, David, but I do believe in control." I clenched my fists. "What do you want?" He tapped the folder. "Simple. Walk away. Sell your land to us. Leave town. Never speak about this again." I glared at him. "And if I don't?" Whitmore's smile faded. "Then you won't like what happens next." I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. Then I looked him dead in the eye. "Go to hell." Whitmore exhaled, as if disappointed. "I hoped you'd be reasonable." Then he turned and walked away, his expensive shoes crunching against my driveway. A black SUV pulled up, and he got inside without another word. As the vehicle disappeared down the road, I made a decision. I wasn't going to run. I wasn't going to hide. I was going to end this. If Whitmore thought he could intimidate me, he was in for a surprise. Because I had one thing he didn't, nothing to lose. I spent the next 48 hours preparing. Step 1. Go public. Sandra published an explosive article exposing Sterling Holdings' HOA takeover schemes, naming Whitmore directly. Step 2. Legal warfare. Greg filed an emergency lawsuit, freezing Sterling's assets and demanding a full investigation into their operations. Step 3. I leaked false information that I was considering selling my land to Sterling. I wanted Whitmore to think he had won. But in reality, I was setting the stage for his downfall. The night before our supposed deal, I got a call from Henry, my retired cop friend. "David, you were right. These guys don't play fair." "What happened?" "They just bribed a judge to fast-track a ruling in their favor." My jaw tightened. "Do you have proof?" Henry chuckled. "Oh, I have more than proof. I have recordings." It was the final piece of the puzzle. Now it was time to take them down. The next morning, I met Whitmore at a private country club, the place where the rich made their backroom deals. He smiled as I approached. "I knew you'd come around." I sat down across from him, keeping my expression neutral. "I'll sign the deal," I said. Whitmore's eyes gleamed. "Smart man." He slid the contract toward me. I picked up the pen, paused. Then I smiled. "You know," I said, "I had a feeling you'd pull some illegal strings to get what you wanted." Whitmore's smile faltered. "What are you talking about?" I pulled out my phone and hit play. Henry's recording filled the air. A judge's voice. A bribe. A clear violation of the law. Whitmore's face turned white. "You," he stood abruptly. "You set me up." I leaned back. "Yep." And then the doors burst open. FBI agents swarmed the room. One of them stepped forward. "Charles Whitmore, you're under arrest for conspiracy, bribery, and multiple counts of fraud." Whitmore turned to me, his eyes burning with rage. "This isn't over," he hissed. I smirked. "Yeah, actually, it is." The aftermath. With Whitmore arrested, Sterling Holdings collapsed overnight. The FBI seized their assets. Many homeowners filed lawsuits against their HOAs. New laws were proposed to strip HOAs of excessive power. And as for my land, permanently protected. No HOA, no greedy developers. Just mine. A week after Whitmore's arrest, I received another letter in my mailbox. It was short. No threats. No demands. Just 4 words. "There will be others." I stared at it for a long time, because I knew this wasn't just my story. HOAs like Whitmore's existed everywhere, and they would keep coming for people like me. But next time, I'd be ready, because this wasn't just about land. This was about fighting back, and I would never stop.